Three, four. Hi, and welcome to this week's episode of Make More Money Now. And today, Patti's got the helm. I'm Gerry Black, marketing writer, coach. I help businesses do with their copywriting and marketing. Patti is the small business sales coach expert, and she's going to talk today about a topic that you'll find where she covered off the first 5 things of what it takes to be characteristics of successful salespeople. So, Patti, over to you.
Hey, thanks, Gerry. And I always, as I tell my students, as I equate entrepreneurs and sales professionals as having a lot in common. I mean, professional salespeople, that's all they do, 9 to 5, 5 days a week. Entrepreneurs have many, many hats where they do everything. And they do sales, they do marketing, they do finance, they do hiring and firing and managing and having the vision. And sales is a very, very important part, because with no sales, there is no business. You're kind of maybe wondering why this topic about the top 10 traits of successful entrepreneurs and salespeople is because it's not just hard skills that you need to master. People hire people now for their emotional intelligence, their soft skills. When I was a headhunter, we used to say, okay, that person's got all the right credibilities. They got the MBA, they got the engineering degree, they got 10 years corporate experience, but would you want to ride in a car for 6 hours with that person? Seriously. That was our determining factor, because don't forget, a lot of people have, office spouses, right? You have your office wife, your office husband, because you spend 8 hours a day or 10 hours a day, 5 days a week. You probably spend more time than with your spouse away with your office partners. So that's why, just to reiterate, the first 5 skills are traits. In my opinion, it was optimism. Gerry said it was confidence. Optimism and confidence tend to go sort of together. If you're confident, you tend to have an optimistic view of, like, my glass is always overflowing because that's the way I fill up, okay? And I have on my counter, I've got a dish rag for my coffee, in the morning. So I'm just super, super enthusiastic to start the day. So for number 1, optimistic, confident. Then it was curious and a good listener. Being knowledgeable about your industry and your customers' pain points, not just about what you do and your products. Is actually what's really important is understanding where your customers, walking in their shoes, being able to effectively communicate and persuade. And that's why these soft skills of understanding, being more self-aware, that, right now in social media, you need to be able to write well and concisely. And Gerry can always help you with that. You need to be tech and social media savvy. I see certain people of a certain generation where they just, they've got 10 connections on LinkedIn because they never really did that. Maybe in their corporate jobs where you don't need it. LinkedIn is different for sales professionals and entrepreneurs than it does for your average corporate executive. So number 6 today, adaptable and agile. Jill Conrath, one of my sales gurus who I totally admire, she wrote a book on agile selling. And it's just about, you need to be able to pivot, one of those 2021 COVID kind of terms. You got to pivot, because that's why scripts don't work, because if you've got your script and you're following your script, but they don't know their lines, they don't know where their part in the script is, and they'll throw a zinger in where you go, no, I'm here to talk about this, and you brought in
on a second.
Has that ever happened to you, Gerry?
Oh, every once in a while. It just, now, of course, because I've listened to you so much, I know what to do. But I'll tell you, I can remember back in the early days where I'd sort of have how I wanted the conversation to go. And then somebody would come out of nowhere and ask a question. I'd be, hold on a second. I'd almost be flipping through to see how do I answer that. So you learn pretty quickly from your early days that you have to be on your feet and think quickly.
Yeah. The little hamster wheels going, oh my God, what, nobody's ever asked me that before, and I don't know the answer. I mean, that's typical in the early stages of selling your products and services, when you're new to a company, for example. And I say to people, if you really want to practice your agility, is go take an improv class, because improv teaches you, where's my elephant, teaches you to really be, actively listening, be in the moment, and say yes and yes and we can do that.
When I was in journalism school, they used to teach us, if you ever aren't sure what you want to do next, you always had a list of throwaway questions. You couldn't have cared less what somebody
Right.
said. You just asked them an open-ended question and let them go on while you gathered your thoughts.
That's right. And you try not to let the panic show on your
Mhm.
face, right? You just, that's why I always had this facade of, so interesting. So tell me a little more about how this happened. Yeah, the throwaway questions you say. So being adaptable and agile, because you got to go with the flow. You got to go where they want to go. If you start forcing them into, like, you really need this product, when they go, no, I want this one. No, you can't have that. It's like, no, they're not going to do business with you because you're trying to force feed them in a place they want, where they don't want to go. And you just, that's not ethical selling. And people don't like to be forced, so being adaptable. I used to be a huge chameleon. Is that whatever you were, is that I would, if you were hyper, I would bring you down a bit. If you were like too low key, I'd bring you up and make, whatever it is, I try to entertain you and make you laugh and get you to relax in whether it's up or down. So that was my job, was to, hey, be the light in your day. So adaptable, agile is super important. And again, through improv, when you can do drop-in improv classes online these days. Other one is, and this is my students picked up on this week, is being passionate. Is like, you have to be deeply in love with what you do, or else you're just in it for the money. And that's not a happy place to be. I don't know if you've ever been in the job just for the money. I have. That was my last employment, and it was awful.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah,
really, really.
you really don't have anything to drive you, right? Because the money will come eventually, but you never know when. Whereas the enthusiasm, you can walk into any selling situation with that immediately, right? So right away, there's a spark.
That's right. I mean, I always say, is if you're not enthusiastic and passionate about your product and that you have the right solution to a client's pain, is why should they buy in, right? If you're just going through the motions because you're going, yeah, if I sell this, then, there's $1,000 payoff for me. I can't wait to get my check. Like, you're just going through the motions. And I would just say is, life is too short to do that. There's so much, I guess, I'm passionate about that, I was passionate about flowers. So I started a garden center and totally, burnt myself out with flowers. Just because, I mean, being a farmer is bloody hard work, but I was just so in love with everything flowers. And I, put on a garden party every year. And I was just totally passionate and love and learning. Because I think if you're passionate about something, you're always learning. And that's an important part. And people can tell if you're just pretending. They can tell. That's where the instinct, something's not sitting right in my stomach. That I think you're pretending. People know when you're false. They know when you're desperate for the sale, too. So next one is empathetic. Is my students are always amazed. I have a student who's in a car accident, and they said, I can't make your course class today. It's like, I understand. Like, I mean, you're not going to be penalized because you were in a car accident. It's out of your control. And, we'll catch you up however we have to do it. There's recordings of my lectures. There's, you always have office time with me, one-on-one, if you need to be caught up and just start your group. So, I mean, being empathetic of putting yourself in their shoes. And like I say to my students, I say, I treat you like responsible adults, and I expect that respect to return to me. And if you've got something come up, a family situation, or God knows what, a special religious holiday, yeah, that's life. If you were my employee, I would treat you the same way, with empathy, because I think the world needs more, not less empathy, right?
Yeah, that's a good point.
When I think I cut somebody off and they had road raging at me, and it's just like, I don't remember cutting you off, or I don't know what I did to make you so mad, and I don't know what's going on in your world, but I forgive you because, it wasn't life or death. We didn't have metal on metal contact. And if you were my blind spot and I cut you off, I'm sorry, but you never know what's going on in somebody's life, right? In the highway. I'll give you an example. God, I was in my local parking lot. And I was petting a dog because, I miss my dog. So I was petting a dog, and it was in an empty parking space. And there was a man very patiently waiting for me to stop petting the dog, which I hadn't noticed. But it was a Sunday morning. It was a Sunday morning,
Yeah.
10 o'clock. He was patiently waiting. And he was very, very generous that way. So So I went and got into my car, and I was backing up. And I guess at the same time, somebody was trying to go forward, and I didn't see her. And she's like, road rage, road rage. And I was thinking, she's going, I was first. And it's like, come on, there's two people in this car park. Like, it's like, seriously, it's a Sunday morning. Just get a grip, like, it's not that important. And it's so funny that, same morning, within 5 minutes, you get somebody who's like, hey, take your time, pet the dog. And the other one's like, I was there first. I should get, the race to get out of the car park.
And I always get the feeling that people that are like that all the time. Like, there's a lot of that. But there was one incident. I remember I think I read about this years ago, and somebody's telling the story about getting on a subway car in New York. And they got on the car, and there were a number of people on the train, of course, but wasn't packed. And there was a fellow that had 3 kids with him. And the kids were all over, climbing the walls, jumping on the seats and everything like that. And somebody, sort of made an assumption and said to the father, I think it was pretty obvious it was father, can you do something about your kids? And he looked at her and he just said, I don't know what to do. Their mother just died, and we just came from the funeral home.
Oh God.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So kind of put, like, he's, there's an example of, you never know what's going on. And, sometimes if you just spend a minute being empathetic, that you can maybe see you may not know what the story is, but something is unusual is going on.
That's right. And then I would get on the floor and start playing with the kids and encourage them to really just let out their emotions. Because that's devastating.
Yeah.
You almost got me in tears here,
Yeah.
because I'm an empathetic crier. So if you cry, I will cry. So don't cry, Gerry. Please
I will
don't
not
cry.
be crying.
But it's just this whole thing about forgiveness. You forgive for yourself, but I also feel sorry for people that are that angry over something that is so trivia, but putting yourself in their shoes and trying to see their viewpoint of, like, when a client is really enraged, my standard thing is, what will it take to make you happy? That's it. What do you want from me? What do you want me to do?
Yeah.
Don't offer solutions unless they go, I don't know, what can you do? When they go, well, do you want this or do you want that? Like, give them options. But first of all, put it on I just want an apology. Oh, that's pretty cheap.
Yeah.
That's fine.
I can do that.
Instead of comping like a $300 meal, it's just like, I want you to acknowledge that, this was crappy.
Yeah.
That's it. They just want that.
That'll often do it.
That's right. So empathetic. Finally, what's really important for any successful business person, whether in sales or an entrepreneur, goals. Writing down your goal, handwriting your goal is, I use sometimes, many days, I use a 3-point goal for this day of what I want to achieve. And then I can go tick, 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 or scratch it out. I'm a scratcher out there. But, it's like being clear of, when you're interrupted by calls and meetings and different things and programs, it's always like, oh, this is what I need to do today. It's just a good reminder. So you have, like, your, maybe, I don't know, my long-term goals. I just don't do those anymore, because they just never, the last thing you think about is like, oh yeah, so I'm back in Canada now. That wasn't in my long-term plan. But anyways.
Plus, you've already made your $50 million. So you cross it off the list. What else is there? Come on.
I know. I think there's a couple of zeros too many there. But anyways, it's having a concrete goal is, like, the only way to manifest something is to know what you want. And it forces you to break it down. So if you do want to make the 50 million, how do you get there? Because I actually, here we go. I have $1 million bill here, which I just It was on my bulletin board as a reminder. Hey, where's my million? Okay, here's my goal. It's visual. I should actually have. I think I actually have one of these in my wallet. Just like Jim Carrey, he wrote himself a check for $10 million.
Sure.
10 million or 10 years later, he actually cashed that check because he had it. So being goal oriented, and finally, the last trait is being competitive. Nobody wins by being the nice laid back person who always lets somebody else go first. I think a key trait for the most successful entrepreneurs and sales professionals is to be competitive, but be competitive with yourself.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, in sales, yeah, I used to get a sales report that was the worldwide sales from all the reps around the world, and I was like, oh good, I'm still number one. I'm still number one, okay, or two. Be competitive. I mean, in full-time professional sales, it's very typical to have a competition because that drives the adrenaline and the competitive spirit.
Sure.
And I think for entrepreneurs is that again, if you know the goal of where you want to get to, is you need to be like, okay, what makes me different? Is compare yourself last week to this week. What have you learned? What new thing can you implement? Or last year, it's like, okay, so we did the big pivot. We do this. It's working. It's not working. And so competitive isn't think about competitiveness in the spirit of, say, the Olympics, where, hey, everybody wants to be a winner. Getting, the top 3 out of, thousands of business coaches or copywriters, like, yeah, I can live with being in the top 10, like that's okay. But don't compare yourself with other people, because your journey is different. So it's competing with yourself to always be a little bit better.
That's a real good point. I think that as far as the competitiveness goes, I mean, we've all been in situations where you've seen a competitive person who's a jerk. Like you're going, whether it's the, whatever the situation, the person is clearly trying too hard and in an appropriate way. It's more of a quiet competitiveness. And I think it really takes place between your own ears and drives you. But I want to go back to the goals for a second, because it ties into the goals and competitiveness. Another great thing when you write out your goals, I started doing this about a year or so ago, is write out your intentions. And your intentions govern, like you have your goals that are very specific and measurable and have a deadline and all of that. But the intentions guide you along the way. The intentions sort of act as a bit of a rudder towards achieving the goals. And here's an example. One of the things I have on my intentions every month is get out of my comfort zone more.
Yeah.
Right. And that'll never be like, you can't really make that into a goal, but it's an intention. And when you see it every day and you're reminded about it, then, like right now I'm working with a client, and I have to learn 2 new programs. And I think, from experience that me working with different apps and programs is definitely out of my comfort zone. So, but I embrace it. And when you embrace it and you say, hey, it goes with the territory, it's easier to do somehow.
That's right. I think that's part of the continual improvement, and you only grow in your discomfort zone, right? You have to get out of that rut.
Yeah.
It's nice to be here. I call it the rut because it's so hard to climb out of it. People are happy there. And it's like, but you're not growing. You're stagnant. And I was going to, your point about having, the jerk who's too competitive, go back to number 8, which was empathy, right? Is like, think about the others. I mean, I will freely acknowledge in my younger days, especially when I was a manager quitting smoking, oh my God, I was awful. First of all, I worked for a training company, had no training as a sales manager. I also still had a sales role. So I was like, I was competing with myself, and my team. It was an unforgivable role. But I mean, I throw in quit smoking, and it's like, oh my God, I apologize. That's all I can say.
I'm sure they're all watching. They'll be watching this episode. So you finally close the circle.
Yeah, but as we get older, we hopefully learn from our mistakes and learn to be more empathetic, to be more emotionally aware. I highly recommend, if you just Google free disc profile, is you can start looking at, which of the four are you, a domineering, are you an intuitive, interactive kind of person, are you more calm and steady for the S, or are you precise and accurate, the C, which is more accountant, engineering, fact based? Which are you? The more you know about yourself, the easier it is to go, okay, so she's pretty laid back, and then he keeps asking me for facts, like exactly how much is this going to cost me, down to the penny. It's like, oh, you're one of those. Okay.
Yeah.
And that's my inside voice. That's my inside voice. But it's once you figure out who you're dealing with, because you know who you are, and you can learn how the two styles match or don't match. And it's like, okay, I'm going to be serious because I'm dealing with a C who's very, very accurate. Okay, all right. So not so much smiling, no
Yep.
jokes. Okay, yeah. But yeah, so all I'm saying is the better you know yourself, the easier it is to communicate with others. And I found with enough therapy, the more comfortable I got with myself, is that I can talk to anybody about anything at any time. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter because I'm really comfortable with myself. I accept who I am, flaws and all, and that's where I'm more accepting of others and their circumstances, which I have no knowledge of. So I just, blanket of don't know what they're going through, not a good time. And I feel sorry if that's their, as you say, that's their way of being. I feel sorry for them. It's
Mhm.
like, get therapy, because, trauma in our past doesn't mean we have to have it forever. So
No,
that's
that's
it.
true.
Yeah.
That's true.
Yeah, so that's the show for today, and I hope you found it interesting, and hope you do your disc profile, do Myers-Briggs, do caliber, do whatever whatever tests, aptitude, attitude kind of assessments, just to get know yourself a bit better, and then start working on it. Listen to a TED talk, or Google whatever you think if you need to be more empathetic, just Google it on YouTube, and sure, there's a talk on it. That's it.
Good.
See
Great
you next
job,
week.
Patty. And just as a reminder to everybody out there, was part 2. So remember, if you like part 2, you can always see part 1. It'll be on our YouTube channel as well. We'll see you
That's right.
next time.
All right. Thanks,
Thanks
Gerry.
again, Patty.
Bye.
Okay, I'm still recording, so don't worry.
Yeah, you have to. It's a double.
Oh, there we go.